I had the order in my laptop. It was a big one too. But when I turned in the credit app, it was turned down by the credit department. They said my customer was too risky. And at one time or another, most salespeople have voiced this same situation. Their commissions go sailing right out the window. Why? Because someone, the president, the owner, the controller, the credit manager, or someone who had been designated to make credit decisions said the customer was a slow payer. And what's the difference as long as the firm gets its money? Or maybe it turned out the customer had a poor rating, but the customer may have been in business for years. How could he turn up with a poor rating? When this happens, the salespeople that work for your clients' companies can feel that they've been cheated out of a sale, and they might be right in some cases, but not in most. Many years ago, cash registers were equipped with a bell. When the bell rang, you heard the coins trickle into the cash drawer, and you knew what had happened. A sale was made. Now, these days, bells may not ring on a cash register, but the exchange of goods or service for money is the same. The transaction isn't a sale until those coins trickle into the cash drawer of the firms that you're calling. If they don't collect the coins, the bell doesn't ring. No sale means no earnings. If there are no earnings, there is no profit. Without a profit, a company can no longer stay in business. It must be remembered that profits are the prime goal of business. A transaction is not a sale until the value of the goods or service is received by your prospective client. Payment, not promises, make the business world go round. And this is a good point to remember when you're selling the services of Lyons and Associates. Let's take a closer look at that slow payer for a minute. Why should it matter if his payment is not made according to the terms of the sale? He pays eventually, doesn't he? But extending credit to another firm is the same as advancing a loan, except that it doesn't have to pay any interest. And don't think that this loan doesn't cost the company extending the credit something. The company that's extending the credit, hence your potential clients, may have borrowed money to make the goods or to provide the service. When a company ships the customer's order, there is left in the inventory. It costs money to buy material to make more goods to fill that gap. If the loan isn't repaid promptly, the company's capital must be used. And if the slow-paying customers get out of hand, employees don't get paid, goods don't get made, and where's the profit? Revenue in here, man? Where's the revenue? Is it in this drawer? Maybe it's in here. No, there's nothing, man. Where's it at? Become trapped in a vicious cycle of slow-paying accounts that ties up capital, it raises costs, and it chases away old customers and destroys profits. They have forgotten that sound credit and collection policies linked to an aggressive sales force are the winning combination that paves the way to solid profits. You, as a Lyons and Associates account executive, can't do about developing the sales force on your client's team, but you can certainly help companies to improve their collection methods. And collection of overdue accounts is one of the most serious problems a company can have. The problem usually begins when top management fails to distinguish between the role of extending credit and collecting overdue accounts. Depending on the size of the company, a credit department or someone designated to approve credit extension to assist a company's sales efforts to generate new and additional business. In larger companies, professional corporate credit managers and controllers, as well as similar decision makers, are responsible for making credit decisions. In medium or small companies, the individuals responsible for approving credit may have very little understanding of the credit extension process to businesses. Whichever is the case, the skills needed to research and approve credit extensions are not the same as those required to collect accounts receivable. When credit grantors lose sight of their primary objective, which is granting credit to qualified buyers, and they pursue a secondary objective, for example, collecting seriously overdue accounts, the result usually is an inappropriate and costly lack of attention to good accounts, the new accounts that are only 30 days or maybe 60 days past due. Once a potential client or a client makes this mistake, it gets caught up in a vicious spiral. The more it concentrates on seriously past due accounts, the more its good accounts slip in to that seriously past due category. At this stage, a difficult decision must be made. Should more people be added to the credit department? Should professional collectors be hired? Should credit for this customer be cut off if he or she is still a customer? Or should the debt be written off? All of these are very expensive options. Many companies will consider a professional collection agency, but some will decide not to use one because of the costs. Worse yet, many will not even consider turning over accounts until they are somewhere between 120 and 180 days past due. And some of these even wait till the accounts are more than a year old. Now, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce, an account that is 90 days overdue is only worth 69.6 cents on the dollar. Hence, they've already lost 31.4 cents on that percent on that account. 180 days overdue drops to a mere 52.1%. After a year, 22.8 cents on a dollar, which is half of the value for the year-old figures 20 years ago. That's because of today's economy. This makes it very important for a company to act fast when it comes to recovering monies that are due to them. Clearly, the company is caught between a rock and a hard place. Additional sales and profit can be lost if accounts are turned over to a collection agency too early, yet collection is extremely difficult if accounts are turned over too late. Then the profits go out the window. Consider the following scenario. Day one, a company makes credit sales with normal 30-day terms. They invoice accordingly with the shipments, the pickup or the delivery, or the invoices are mailed immediately after. On average, let's say the monthly credit sales total $100. Day 30 comes. 65% of the bills are paid. The company has received $650,000 and $350 is past due. Second invoices are sent. At day 60, an additional 15% comes in. Now the business has collected $800,000 of their million. $200,000 is still owed. Third invoices are sent, perhaps with a stronger reminder notice, and a few phone calls is made. They get to day 90, only another 5% is paid. This means $850 paid with $150,000 that is now 90 days old or 60 days past due. Other invoices, maybe some dunning letters are sent, additional phone calls are made on each account. Then the debtors start being at lunch or in a meeting, or maybe they're not in today, and this happens with alarming regularity. In another 15 days, the fourth invoices are sent with seriously past due, stamped in red. At day 120, which is 90 days delinquent on 30-day net terms, 10% more gets collected. So they have now collected $950,000 of their million. And $50,000 is now 90 days past due. The credit department personnel swing into action to collect this $50,000 because they realize that the company operates at a 10% profit margin, and it will take $500,000 in new sales to offset $50,000 in uncollected bills. So they send more invoices, make more calls, send more letters demanding payment. With each call, it seems harder to get through. The calls are not returned. The sales department reports that the customer is becoming angry, and the sales department urges the credit department, hey man, ease up on my customer. The credit department suggests that the salesperson should collect the money. Hey man, go out and see your customer. Ask him if he has our money. They argue among themselves about whose responsibility it is to collect. Now we're at day 150. No payment. $50,000 is now 120 days past due. The debtor has the company, the client, he has their capital in the form of goods or services sold for 150 days. 30 days normal terms plus 120 days past due. The credit department works even harder. The owner or an executive may even make phone calls. More invoices are sent, and the customers stop doing business with the company and start doing business with someone else. The balance is not collected, and all the company has left is a hope and a prayer that the customers pay. This is actually pretty common scenario in accounts receivable. Not all of them will be that way. However, there will be a substantial percentage that will have that particular situation. Okay, one thing we want to understand is good risk versus bad risk and what the difference is. The first thing that we must recognize is that delinquent accounts are a natural consequence of extending credit to large numbers of businesses. If the company's credit policy is too conservative, it will probably lose business to its competitors. If their credit policy, on the other hand, is too liberal, the company will probably end up with a sizable number of delinquent accounts. Then, too, sales departments and companies have sales quotas to meet. Generally, the salesperson is not too concerned about the customer's credit rating. Their interest is in making the sale. Consequently, in a number of instances, the decision to grant credit is not always based on sound business judgment. Therefore, because nearly all businesses operating today depend upon credit to increase their sales, you must be familiar with the dynamics working on the corporate individuals whose responsibility it is to approve credit. In granting credit, favorable consideration is given to a good risk. Credit is denied to a bad risk. So, how do you decide? For example, a company may look prosperous, and all the signs point to a resourceful company able to meet its bills promptly. But its request for credit is turned down. Why? First of all, there is no such thing as a risk-free order when credit is involved. Next, appearances are not necessarily a sign of a company's credit standing. Big companies fail, and small companies become overnight giants. There is no foolproof guide to determine in advance whether or not a company is a good credit risk. There are factors favorable and factors unfavorable that point in one direction or the other. The sum of these factors decides whether a company is or is not a favorable credit risk. To sell our services here, you will want to be aware of the key basic elements that influence credit decisions. To give you a detailed explanation of credit and finances is hardly necessary and might actually be misleading in this instance, but a confident understanding of credit principles and the part that they play in approving or disapproving credit is absolutely essential knowledge. The first guide in reaching a credit decision is the credit policy of your prospects. Is it liberal or is it conservative? Or does it fall somewhere in between? A manufacturer of unique or copyrighted goods may have a very conservative credit policy which eliminates all but the very best credit risks because retailers must buy from them. For example, a company might manufacture a unique machine needed by one of its customers. There are only 2 other companies that manufacture this same machine. Therefore, this company's customer is limited in where it can buy this particular machine. Another example would be the company that ships perishable goods, which are very hard to get unless a company has a favorable credit history. The reason for this is that once the items are consumed, they can't be recovered. For example, the sale of sugar, coffee, or any type of consumable product. Knowing this, the manufacturer can maintain a very conservative credit policy and hence have little or no past due accounts. On the other hand, another company in a very competitive field might necessarily have a much more liberal credit requirement, which might result in past due accounts. So, knowing the credit policy of your prospects and clients can be the first step in determining whether the prospect can be a regular source of business for you. Every well-managed business tries to avoid the extremes of a credit policy so conservative that it actually loses business, or an extremely liberal policy that can soon roll up excessive losses. Decisions might be based on extraneous conditions, local, regional, or national, but nearly always 3 considerations come into play. For convenience, these are termed the 3 C's of credit, which are character, capacity, and capital. And briefly, here's what you should know about each. Character, in general usage, means the inner nature of an individual. In our usage, where character is the primary consideration in determining credit risk in business, we need complete moral responsibility, absolute honesty, and integrity. Character, as such, is the principal factor for determining credit extensions in many companies which sell to small businesses or small retailers. Determining character conclusively is a difficult, if not impossible, task. Character is implied by appearances, and appearances can be deceiving. A reasonable assumption of character based on the full consideration of all available appearances is the most that can be attempted. But every resource that determines character should be explored to be sure that each candidate for credit has the qualities of honesty and integrity that will make him always willing and determined to meet his obligation. Credit is inconceivable without trust. Since security is almost never required in business credit transactions, character of the principal is doubly important as an element of credit risk. The promise of payment later is the only security in normal business credit. And a promise is no better than the person who makes that promise. Second, capacity. The person with character will meet obligations when he can. The next question is, can he pay? An individual's capacity to pay is determined mainly by his education, his training experience, and the ability to apply all to their maximum advantage in earning his livelihood. The management of personal finances, hence the ability to live within and conserve income, is an essential element in judging an individual's capacity to pay. In other words, does the principal of the business have enough disposable income left over to maintain his style of living after he has paid his fixed obligations, such as rent on the building or mortgage payments, other monthly obligations, utilities, phone service, insurance, whatever. Additionally, the capacity of a business to pay is determined by the business ability of the owner or management. This is revealed by the performance of a business. If the record shows steady growth and profits with all accounts paid at discount or when due, the management must be assumed to have good business ability and a good capacity to pay. It also means that they have established a satisfactory history of repaying obligations within the terms of the invoice agreement. The ideal way to determine capacity is to make a careful analysis of a company's financial statement. Sometimes this is obtained. Most times it isn't. But even in the cases it is obtained, the personnel or the company granting the credit may not be skilled enough to properly interpret income statements and balance sheets. Furthermore, some businesses are reluctant for a variety of reasons to make their financial statements available. I know for a fact, if a customer or someone I intend to do business with asks for our company's financial statements, I would tell them it's not available to them. We're a privately held company. That means our financial statements are private. However, on the other end of the spectrum, if I were building a fiduciary relationship with a bank and expecting them to extend credit to me, I would have no other choice but to make those financial statements available to them. Now, new businesses offer a different and difficult problem where credit is concerned because there are no standing records to help establish an objective appraisal. Thousands of businesses are established every year, and a large percentage of them fail because the owners, who may possess character beyond any doubt, simply do not have the ability to run a business successfully. In many instances, the fundamentals of business ability may be there, but they are untested. The third on this is capital. Capital answers the capacity question. Can he pay? If the answer is yes, capital will supply the answer to how much can he pay. In most personal loan credit or consumer credit, income rather than capital is the dominant factor that determines the worthiness of a credit applicant. The individual must have sufficient income to pay the monthly installments for the credit requested, as well as his other monthly obligations. In business, capital is the investment available to produce profits. Capital is an element in determining the credit risk, or I should say capital as an element in determining the credit risk is the financial condition of the applicant, not just the balance sheet net worth. Is the capital there? The condition of the assets as well as their existence is important. If capital is tied up in inventory or accounts receivable, the salability of the inventory or the collectability of the accounts is of paramount interest. If the assets consist of property and equipment, their availability as security for a bank loan is a primary consideration. If the assets are insured against the hazards of fire, theft, or other disasters, it is essential to know to what extent are they covered. In a corporation, capital is limited to the actual corporate assets, which include the investment of the stockholders. In unincorporated businesses, capital includes the personal property of the owners. In a new business, the source of capital may have an important bearing on the decision to extend credit and the amount of the credit that will be extended. On the 3 C's, we're not going to get much further into that, and we're not going to go too far past this. But what we want to ask ourselves is why delinquent accounts? Guarding the nation's profits is the motto of one of the biggest credit associations, and that's quite a mouthful. And in an ideal world, a utopia, most business credit grantors could live up to this motto. Unfortunately, we live in the real world. They don't always do so. So typically, before extending credit, a business is going to obtain a credit application, and a well-trained credit manager will review and verify the information. Based on this credit application, a thorough customer investigation applicant pays other suppliers. His payment history, in other words. How is he paying mortgage payment? Does he lease or own the equipment? What's the total volume of sales? And also the applicant's bank is contacted for financial information. Now this is in an ideal world, a perfect world. This doesn't always happen in credit decisions. And one of the things we want to always help our clients out with is giving them a copy of our sample credit application so they can make their decisions better, so they can be provided more information. In addition, the credit applicant sometimes is asked to supply an up-to-date financial statement, sometimes, not all the time, and a credit report may also be obtained by that credit manager. On marginal risks, a personal guarantee may be obtained. Carefully analyze it, and they determine the net worth of the business, its business trend, whether it's up or down, and whether or not it has the 3 C's: character, capacity, and capital. Once this is done, the credit decision is made. This, again, is the ideal situation. In many instances, this procedure may not be followed. However, this is an instance that should be followed by all credit grantors. All businesses should follow those things for granting credit. Now, I mentioned the real world here because that's where we live, in the real world, where the credit manager or the person responsible for granting the credit is under a great deal of pressure from the sales force and upper management to approve as many credit sales as possible. After all, more sales mean more profit, right? If the business delays in making that credit decision, the credit applicant or buyer might go to a competitor to make his purchase. In some cases, the credit interview and the credit application are completed by a salesperson, a person that is more interested in making the sale and feels to delve into the customer's financial position might lose him the sale. Hence, the credit department does not receive adequate information in order to make a sound credit decision. Thus, in most instances, the credit investigation is no more than a promise. Perhaps they've contacted the Better Business Bureau or some other consumer protection agency. The credit applicant's bank may be contacted, may not, or if authorized, a credit report might be obtained, or only a credit report is obtained. Often, nothing is done, and the credit decision is simply made on the gut reaction of the credit grantor. In some cases, a credit app isn't even taken. Some companies don't even have credit applications. Also, once credit has been extended, in most instances, little or no further investigation is ever conducted on reorders. In these cases, the buyer may continue to buy and may receive higher and higher credit extensions while nothing is being done to substantiate the amount. And in this instance, the buyer may become overextended, unable to pay, and the account becomes past due. In some other instances, instead of conducting a thorough credit investigation, business credit grantors exchange ledger information with other suppliers. They investigate the customer's paying habits through exchange groups like a trade organization or agency. And these may be more or less informal local gatherings of a few business people who happen to have the same customers. Or they might be highly organized operations which attempt to make available to their members or subscribers. A trade association, credit department, or special line credit agency, for example, may try to report the payment history of all of their suppliers in its industry. And in the case of the national credit interchange system, which is sponsored and coordinated by NACM, the aim is to cover all lines of sellers in the continental United States. This type of information may be good or bad, simply depending upon its source. Most companies maintain a membership in the NACM, National Association of Credit Management. This is an association comprised of mainly credit managers. And this is, of course, something we would encourage to clients, so their credit management can be properly schooled. In addition, the NACM maintains a collection service. There are also state associations which serve the same function. So during the calling of prospects, you will find that some of them place their accounts with state associations or NACM. The one thing that they need to be aware of if they do this is that these are somewhat ineffective and can be countered very easily. The trade associations that maintain a collection service for their members are not, they're not going to do the things that we would do because they're looking to retain members. Here again, these collection efforts are not very effective. Just with those and the state associations, it can be countered very easily if that's something that you run into. Yes, we encourage membership to associations like that for the credit managers we deal with. However, we don't encourage them to place their accounts with them, because if they're getting their customers that are members of these associations, and this association has to go after one of their own member customers to collect a debt, what do you think the primary objective is going to be? Do you think it's going to be to collect the debt, or do you think it's going to be to retain membership? It's a good question for you and your client to ask themselves. I think at this point I'm going to open up the floor. And man, we can't call it much of a floor with two people here. Wow. I think I need to get with Rick and see, get him to take his axe out and start sharpening it. Anyway, at least we do have a couple of viewers. Hopefully they're people who are on the phone with us. Kim, did you get your mic working yet? Okay, I got a chat message here. Okay. Well, we can take a look at that. Kim, why why don't you give me a shout after we get off of the Hangout, restart your machine, and, well, that's not going to tell us if your microphone's working, because we'll be out of the Hangout. I want to talk to you about something anyway, so give me a shout a couple minutes after we get off of this. And Hank, do you have any comments, questions? And I know you come from a banking background, so a lot of this stuff you probably already know. So.
Right, good information. You know, two things I like. You know, if you get somebody that's dealing with another agency that I like talking about, that's been generates conversation, is, you know, our credit app. You know, that's a good discussion item. It seems like, you know, I've had some companies that don't even use a credit app, or our credit app might add to it, and then the credit, if they're looking to, we can add a credit inquiry for somebody. Those are some things some good things to bring up. Just some value adds. I mean, we can figure out a way to separate us from whoever they're dealing with currently.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, using that credit app as a freebie for prospects and clients can absolutely help you get into conversations with them about their credit and how they go about approving it. And when you're doing that, you're building value to your potential customer. That's, in many cases, the cement that can hold that relationship together and begin a very lucrative relationship between you and your client. And when I say lucrative, I mean for both parties. You know, your client can make improvements which boost their income level, and, you know, of course, as an account executive, there are commissions to be made. So it's absolutely a good thing. Are you still running into a lot of no-need prospects?
Still run into those. You know, just try to question them, and you know, sometimes I run into the specialized industry where they say they got a captive audience. I mean, you know, just there's some of those, and I try to, you know, weed out if they're lying. If they're not, you know, if I get a lot of information from them, then I'll move on to the next one. And if I don't think they're being truthful, I'll put them back in for back next month. Maybe talk to someone else. That's kind of what I've seen with Rick. I mean, it's interesting. I've seen him call some people where, you know, his initial call, they told him one thing. You call back, even talk to the same person, and they tell you a totally different thing, which tells you they were lying. And, you know, and I've, you know, heard him catch them lying. So when we talked last time, you told me such and such, and I go, oh, okay. So that's the importance of keeping good notes. That, you know, the psychology involved is interesting. I mean, it's, you know.
That's right. And
interesting.
I can promise you that these prospects don't keep a note of what lie they tell to what person.
Right. So it's just an interesting process of getting that information, developing a relationship, and there's no secret to, you know, there's no, it's not, you know, it's an art to doing this job. There's, you know, very interesting.
Absolutely, man. And, you know, I've done a lot of things professionally, and this absolutely has to be my favorite. I mean, it just, you never stop learning it. That's what I love about it. You know, there's always something new, and to me, that's awesome. You know, it's like comparatively, like if you play an instrument, even if you're a virtuoso musician, which I'd have to say I'm pretty close to that, if not virtuoso on a guitar. But whenever I pick it up, man, I'm still looking for something to learn. And the same thing in this, and as awesome as music is, it takes a back seat to this totally. I don't even play gigs anymore, so I can spend more time doing this because it's just awesome. And it's funny, man, because I turn down gigs all the time, and it's probably been 5 years since I've last played a show. People still call me. And I tell them, no, no way, man. No way. Not that I don't miss it, but this is absolutely something that you just learn so much about every walk of business. And credit is an interesting thing, especially the collection end of it. So I think we're going to wrap this thing up here. Did you have anything else, Hank?
No other questions right now. That was good information. You know, I had read through that the training thing before, but it's just reinforcement. I mean, I try to get a little better every day, learn a little bit every. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Good deal. All right. Well, I guess let's wrap this thing up and get back to doing what it is we do. And I'll see you on here Friday.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Take it easy.